let's talk about a huge blind spot for executives who are using AI. And look, it's not about the tech itself, it's about how we govern the really high stakes decisions that AI helps us make. Getting this wrong doesn't just lead to bad decisions, it leads to ones you literally can't defend. So let's break down how to get it right.
We've all felt this by now, right? You throw a super complex question at your AI, and bam, a clear, confident answer pops up in seconds. It's like having this brilliant analyst on standby 24/7, doing work that used to take entire teams weeks. The speed, the clarity, it feels like a superpower. But here's the question we have to ask ourselves. Is all that speed actually making you vulnerable? Because that same power can create some massive blind spots. When you rely on that polished AI output without the right process behind it, you're not just making decisions faster, you're making mistakes faster, and probably on a much bigger scale.
And that leads us right to the heart of the problem. See, the real danger isn't the AI. It's what the source material calls the governance gap. It's that empty space where these super fast AI-driven decisions get made without the structure that makes them defensible. That gap, that's the real threat.
Okay, so what is this gap really? Well, think of it like this. On one side, you've got what the AI gives you, all the information, the analysis, the different options. But on the other side, you have what you, as a leader, are responsible for. Things like owning the decision, setting risk boundaries, and making sure the whole thing is defensible. That huge chasm in between, that's where all the risk is hiding. And when you lay it out like this, the problem just clicks. The AI gives you a confident-sounding answer, but the leader needs to provide the justification. The AI gives you incredible speed, but the leader is on the hook for creating an audit-ready record. It perfectly shows the core idea here. AI brings the intelligence, but leaders absolutely have to bring the governance.
All right, so this isn't just theory. Let's dig into a real-world story from the source material. It's a perfect example of how this governance gap can make a totally reasonable decision just completely fall apart the second it's put under a microscope. So picture this. A CFO asks an AI to find some savings. The AI comes back and suggests shifting 15% of the budget from facilities over to IT. I mean, it looks logical, it sounds efficient, so the CFO signs off on it. Easy, right? Well, fast forward 3 months and the board asks a very simple question. Why exactly did you make this call? And this, right here, is the absolute key. The CFO's decision wasn't actually a bad decision. The problem was that he couldn't defend it. The process behind it was totally hollow. The AI gave him an answer, but it didn't give him the structure to back that answer up. When the board started asking questions, he couldn't tell them what the AI's core assumptions were. There was no risk assessment on file, no analysis of the best case or worst case scenarios, and no audit trail. And that original AI analysis he used? Oh, it had been deleted. So the decision, even though it seemed fine on the surface, was basically built on thin air. So how do we fix this mess? Well, the source material gives us a really powerful and practical solution. It's called the 5-pillar framework. And it's a simple structure that's designed to close that governance gap and make your AI-assisted decisions safe, sound, and most importantly, totally defensible. This whole framework is built on 5 simple but powerful questions. First, authority. Who actually owns this decision? Next, assumptions. What are we just taking for granted here? Third is analysis. What's the best that could happen, what's likely to happen, and what's the worst-case scenario? Fourth, accountability. How are we going to check in on this, and what are our kill metrics? Those triggers that tell us it's time to stop. And finally, auditability. 6 months from now, can we stand in front of the board and defend this thing? So what's the payoff? What happens when you actually put this framework into practice? Well, you don't just end up with an answer. You end up with a whole set of tangible, defensible documents and records. This is what a really well-governed decision looks like. Yeah, a governed process always leaves a trail. It forces you to write a clear problem statement. It makes you name a single decision owner. It creates documentation for your assumptions, risks, and different scenarios. It gives you a timeline with checkpoints and those really crucial kill metrics that tell you exactly when to pull the plug. And at the end of it all, it leaves you with a complete, audit-ready record of the entire decision. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Governance sounds like bureaucracy, like it's just going to slow everything down. But that's a total misconception. This isn't about moving slower. It's about having the discipline to make sure that the decisions you're making at AI speed are also clear and, crucially, defensible when the heat is on.
At the end of the day, what we're talking about here is a huge shift in what it means to be a leader. Mastering this kind of decision governance, well, it's not some techie task you can just delegate. It's becoming a core skill for any effective leader in the age of AI. I just love how the source material boils this down. It says, AI provides intelligence, leaders provide governance. Your job isn't to be smarter than the AI. Your job is to provide that framework of judgment, of risk management, and accountability that an AI simply doesn't have. And you gotta know, this is where things are headed. As AI gets woven into every single part of the business, the expectation for this level of discipline is gonna come from everywhere, from your board, from auditors, and eventually from regulators. This isn't just a nice to have, it's the future standard of practice. So that really leaves us with one last question to take back to our own teams and our own companies. As we're making these big, important decisions, are we just using AI to get answers faster? Or are we actually building a governance process around it that makes those answers defensible, resilient, and truly ready for the future?